Inheritance. Now, we are already familiar with the idea that a sperm joins together with an egg to make a baby. In doing so, a sperm, which contains half the amount of DNA, joins with an egg that contains half the normal amount of DNA to make a baby which contains the full amount of DNA. If we look at this in terms of the chromosomes involved, the sperm would contain one of each chromosome pair, the egg would contain one of each chromosome pair, and the baby would therefore contain a full chromosome pair. Because the chromosomes have identical arms, so each chromatid is exactly the same, but within the pair of chromosomes they contain the same genes but different alleles, this means that for every gene, for every instruction, the baby is getting two versions of that instruction. What we need to establish now is how we know which version of that instruction to express. Let's look at this another way. Sometimes it is simpler in these examples to look at plants. So we have a red plant, okay, and that crosses with a white plant. Okay, now we've got several possible outcomes. Either all of the offspring are pink. My drawing's not being very good today. Or all of our offspring are either red or white. Okay? Now, back in the 1800s, a man called Gregor Mendel did a series of experiments, and he found that this was not the case, but that this was the case. So we don't usually get blends. We don't usually get outcomes that are a blend of the parents. What we tend to get is either one or the other. This happens in the vast majority of cases. So we need to think about why that is. To look at this example, we're going to use the example of tongue rolling. Tongue rolling is a genetic trait, and you either can or can't roll your tongue. So our two alleles are can or can't. Now, in this situation, the can allele is what we call dominant. Now, what that means is that if an individual has a can allele, it doesn't matter what the other allele is, they will be able to roll their tongue. Someone who can't roll their tongue has the recessive allele, and because it is recessive, they must have two copies of that allele. Let me explain. If we have two parents, so we have our mum and we have our dad, okay? And we say that they both can roll their tongue, okay? That means that they have to have at least one of their instructions, one of their alleles must be can roll their tongue, which I'm representing with a capital T, okay? Now, the other one doesn't actually matter. They could have two can roll their tongues, or they could have a can roll their tongue and a can't roll their tongue. Because they have a can roll their tongue, they will be able to roll their tongue. To help you think about where these alleles have come from, remember, in our cells we have our pairs of chromosomes. This allele is on this chromosome, and this allele is on this chromosome. So for each gene, we have 2 alleles. We always have 2 alleles for every gene. Okay? So our mum here has a can and a can't, but because can is dominant, that means she can roll her tongue. Our dad, in this example, could have 2 can roll his tongue, so he definitely can roll his tongue. So it's a good opportunity for us now to introduce a new word. This, where you have the same allele twice, we call homo, meaning the same, and zygous, and that's to do with alleles, so the same alleles. And this one is different, so hetero, meaning different, and zygous, meaning to do with the alleles. Okay, so this person is heterozygous and this person is homozygous. The dominant means that it is expressed regardless of the second allele, and the recessive means it can only be seen if both alleles are shown. So that means that to have a can't roll their tongue, then they're going to need to have a little t and another little t. They've got to have 2 versions of that same allele, otherwise you won't be able to see the can't roll their tongue. Okay, let's look at this a slightly different way. So inside the nucleus of every cell, except the sex cells, there are 23 pairs of chromosomes. So in that pair, 1 chromosome comes from your biological mother, this one, and 1 from your biological father, that one. So 1 comes from the sperm and 1 comes from the egg. If you look at all of your chromosome pairs, so this is what we call a karyotype, all 23 pairs laid out. You can see that chromosome 1 would have 1 of the pair from the mother and 1 of the pair from the father. Same with chromosome 7, 1 from the mother and 1 from the father. In fact, it's the same for every single pair. So in every human cell, apart from the eggs and the sperm, there are 23 pairs of chromosomes, and in each pair, 1 chromosome comes from the mother and 1 from the father. The chromosomes that come from your father will be slightly different from the chromosomes that you get from your mother, as we've already discussed. They're going to have the same genes, the instructions, but they might have the different form, the alleles, the different forms of that instruction. So the alleles are the different forms for a gene for the same characteristic. So but the gene for tongue rolling has 2 alleles, can and can't, and you get 1 allele for each gene from each parent. So if we look at the chromosome pairs again, this is your chromosome from your mother, and she has given the can roll the tongue allele. And this is the chromosome from the father, and he's given the cannot roll the tongue allele. Okay, so which characteristic will this person show? They have 1 allele that says can and another which says cannot. Now, we already know that alleles, it's the interaction of these alleles that will determine which characteristic the person will receive. They don't blend. So a red and white allele will not result in pink. They're either dominant or recessive. And the dominant allele will always express itself, and the recessive allele will only express itself if both alleles are recessive. So back to the tongue rolling. If this is where the gene for tongue rolling is, and the mother's given you can and the father's given you cannot, and tongue rolling, the can is dominant, will this person be able to roll their tongue? Have a think, have a think. And the answer, of course, is yes, they can, because they have 1 can roll their tongue allele. So let's have a look at how it could be inherited. We have our mum who can and our dad who cannot. So which alleles would each parent have? Well, the mum can either have big T, so we say that the big T represents can and the little t represents cannot. So she can either be big T or big T, little t. Because dad cannot, he has to be little t, because he has to have both recessive alleles.
So what sex cells could each parent make? Well, mum can either make big T and a big T, or a big T and a little t, and dad will always make little t. Because remember, a sex cell only has one chromosome, therefore it only has one allele. So each parent gives one sex cell to the child. So she is giving a big T or a big T to the child. We're going to assume it's this one. And so the father will always give little t. Okay? So that means that the children are all going to be big T, little t. Sorry, big T, little t, big T, little t, big T, little t, big T, little t. So all of the children will be able to roll their tongue. Now, this word here, genotype. Genotype is the measure of which alleles there are. So mum here is either big T, or big T, little t. So that's her genotype. So here we've said that she is big T genotype. She could also be the big T, little t genotype. And both of these genotypes give her the phenotype, which is what we can see, of can. Dad has the phenotype of cannot, so his genotype is always little t, little t. Okay? If we look at the other genotype for the mum, and in this case we have a dad who also can, so they both can, but we're looking at the genotype big T, little t in both cases. They can both make a big T sex cell or a little t sex cell. Okay, so that means that the offspring situation is a bit more complicated. You can have big T, big T, little t, big T, little t, or little t, little t. So in this case, 3 of the offspring would be able to roll their tongue, and 1 of the offspring wouldn't. Now, obviously, this is quite complicated. There are some very important words here. Genotype, which is which alleles for each gene an organism has. Phenotype, which characteristics of the gene the person is expressing. Homozygous, which is having the same alleles for the gene. And heterozygous, which is having the 2 different alleles for the gene. What I suggest that you do now is that you go back through this video, watch it again, and then try and complete your booklet. In your booklet, there are some references to the pages in your textbook that you may also find useful.